Hidden away on mysterious October Mountain in Massachusetts, where UFOs, Bigfoot, and ghosts are said to be seen, lies a forgotten cemetery. Ravaged over time, most of the stone markers that identified the dead are gone, and partial burial records most likely do not account for every soul resting in the small clearing. With the help of the bone finder Robert Perry and the technology of ground-penetrating radar, we will look below the surface to locate many of the unmarked graves. Join us as the bone finder tracks the dead.
My name is Bob Perry, and I have a company called Topographics. We are in the cemetery mapping and ground penetrating radar business. And right now we are located in October Mountain in Washington, Massachusetts. And we are at a West Branch cemetery. And what we're going to be doing here is kind of assessing the area to try to find out how many burials or how many graves are located in the cemetery. My first assessment of the area is that you've got a lot of pitting in the ground. And that's a sure indication that you have burials that are located here. How many, I don't know yet. We're going to find that out as we go along with the GPR, the ground penetrating radar. And we're also going to be mapping the cemetery as well to get some idea of where the headstones are located and how they're positioned. What happened in this particular situation, it could have been a wooden coffin, and the coffin was collapsed completely and is down to about 2 or 3 inches. So when we use GPRing, it will measure soil disturbance in the ground. It does not measure, you don't look for bones, you don't see anything of that nature. There could be a metal plate, there could be a void that's in the ground, and that's what we're looking for. When we're using the GPR, we're looking for voids in the ground. When we do this, when I determine if I have a burial, when I have these things lined up, what I like to do is that as I'm scanning across the ground, what I'll do is I'll get a hit. On the recording on the computer, we'll see what they call a hyperbolus, which is like an upside down U shape. We're going to set up the GPS. And the GPS we're going to set up before we start scanning. We're going to set up the GPS, and we're going to GPS the location of all the headstones that you see here. There's a laser beam on the other side of this that goes from here directly to the tripod. There's a prism on the top of the tripod. And the laser beam will stay right for it. As long as that laser beam is not broken in the direction between the tripod, the robotic, and him, you'll constantly keep that no matter where he goes. Mm-hmm. And this is a 400 megahertz antenna, and it shoots down, and this is where you get the radar from. Mm-hmm. Now what you're looking at right here, this is a burial. So the white areas that you see here, these are all burials. Stone right here. See? There's your stone right there. So there's a stone right here. There's probably a buried headstone right here.
We're putting stakes in the ground every 4 feet according to our tape measure here.
That particular cemetery was in a very rural part of town, not connected to a church, not connected to a family, but it was a town cemetery that was in a bad location. Flood that went through that area and created an incredible amount of damage down in Lee and Lenox, where water ended up. Now there's stories that, have been handed down around what happened in that flood in terms of how many coffins might have been washed away and sent down stream. It was hard to determine. There really wasn't exact records kept during those times. And I think, it was considered a serious tragedy to the town that had happened, but had no way to remediate, the situation. And then because of its location, it was heavily vandalized. stones were knocked down, broken, stolen, whatever. It has been in pretty much disrepair over the years, and now it's, I guess, to the point where there's only one stone standing. The rest have been knocked down.
Even though it may be a little bit of a hill structure right here, up here I don't see anything that would represent that you would have some sort of a flood that would come down and actually do that much damage where it would be wash out the graves and take away a lot of the graves. Simply for the fact is that graves are in the 3 to 4 foot level. So and I don't see any impressions in the ground except for a couple of them, but those impressions that we see in the ground are basically collapsed coffins. If there was a flood in this particular area or any part of the cemetery, you would see the ground washed out like this. The ground would be like, it would be all washed out, whether it's down in here or the top, but you don't see any of that in here at all. You don't see any washing. What we're looking at right here, as we're scanning the line, I will flag the anomalies where I see them in the ground. And then I want to be able to pick up a second anomaly beside it before I classify it as a high probability of a burial. Good one right here. This may be, no, this one right here in the middle. The headstones may have moved a little bit, but we got one right here, right back up. There's one right here. I believe this might be the end. Is this the Anna Pease grave? Yep. This is probably it right here. I can see it right here on the screen. It's right here. See it right there?
Yeah, you took that down.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
My name's Jeff Belanger, and I've been researching legends for almost 20 years now. I write about them in books, I host a television show about them, I lecture about them, and I'm just captivated by how a legend is really our past coming to our present. And it's a connection with each other, and it's a way to kind of explore our own inevitable future. So I first heard about a ghost haunting the top of October Mountain, probably back around 2006. All I knew was there was an abandoned cemetery somewhere up there, and a ghost of a little girl has been seen. That's all I knew. And these legends float around all kinds of places. So the first time I went up there, I was actually looking for all kinds of things, because there were Bigfoot sightings on October Mountain. There were the ghost sighting and UFO sightings back in the 40s that we found in the newspapers have been spotted around there. So we go hiking up, and this is the largest state forest in Massachusetts. It's tens of thousands of acres, totally huge. And we didn't find anything, but it was a really great hike. We found the remains of Camp Eagle. We found some cellar holes, so we know people lived up there, but a cemetery somewhere near the top is a needle in a haystack. So a few years later, I went back with a television crew and a guy that knew where it was, and he brought us up there and took us. And I could see how it'd be difficult to explain where it is. It's like saying, there's a big rock and you go over that and you go by this tree. So we go into this clearing, and it's not that big. I would say maybe 1/4 of an acre or so in size, and all the headstones are knocked over. But suddenly the legend gets some roots to it, because now there really is a cemetery. We're standing in it, we see it, and we walk in sort of on the left side of it and then come in just a bit, and there's this grave, Anna Pease, aged 10 years, 9 months. And I looked down and I went, there is a little girl buried up here. So the story airs on television, and then we get a phone call about a month later from a guy named Nelson Pease. And he said, I'm a Pease. I'd never heard of this grave. My family's coming in from Minnesota for Thanksgiving. Could you tell us where it is? And we started talking to him, and we said, we can do better. We'd love to take you there. And this was just a few days before Thanksgiving, a few years ago. And we take the family up there, and they brought in this antique pump organ. And the wife played the organ, and she played a song called Gentle Annie. And it was just this really special moment. And the whole family sings, Thou will come no more, gentle Annie. Thy spirit did depart. And I just thought, I was getting completely choked up. Just a few days before Thanksgiving, And I thought, okay, this is how powerful a legend is. You don't have to believe in ghosts, but a ghost story first led me up that mountain a decade ago. Exploring that story helped me give a little girl a name again, and telling that story reunited a family. And though I don't know much about Anna Pease, who she was in life, I can tell you this. Up there around that cemetery, there was a logging community that provided timber and things for the surrounding areas. And people lived up there, and they worked up there, and they died up there. And these folks are all but forgotten. That grave probably hadn't been visited by family in over 150 years. And at that moment, I said, I can't put a ghost in a jar and show it to the world, but that's as real as it gets, just shy of physical proof. Anna Pease haunts up there, however you want to define the word haunts, because we need to remember the pioneers, the people that were here before us. Not just our family, not just our upbringing, but the people that forged a really hard living up there in the mountains, in the cold. I mean, you can imagine up there, it would be snowing. We're down in a valley, it might be rain. It was a hard life, but they did it, and they were here before us, and they laid groundwork that we still feel today. And I think that's what makes this story so special. Anna Pease, I don't know so much about her in life, but I know what she represents. She represents hundreds, if not thousands, of long-forgotten villages around New England, around the world, places that came up, a little industry was born, but they never made it. And maybe we'd forget about them entirely if not for a ghost story.
Remember me as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you shall be. Prepare for death and follow me.
I was working, I get a call to do a job in Sparta, Georgia. Now, down there, it's a very rural cemetery area. It's out in the country area, and there was an old Baptist church that was there, and the Baptist church was basically torn down. And other than the church being there, there was just a foundation and an old outhouse that was falling down. Now, this area, you could tell if anybody was coming down the roadway, because you would see dust being kicked up for a mile, because this was like 3 miles into the woods, and you'd see dust being kicked up. So for 3 days after the gentleman, my client left, I couldn't find, there was not one person that drove down this roadway the entire time that I was there, and I was there, like I said, for 3 days. So I'm working down there, and at the end of each day, I would collect all my gear. And so on the last day that I was working there, this happened to be Halloween, and I was working in the area, and I was probably about 30 feet away from this outhouse, an old outhouse that was torn down. And as I'm collecting my gear, and it was just turned dark, and out of the left-hand side of my eye, in peripheral vision, I see this full-size image walk into this outhouse. And at that particular point, my hair, the back of my neck, I got a sickening feeling in my stomach, and I turned around and I panicked. And what I did, I just made a right, he was on my left, I made a right turn, I beelined for my truck. I hit my truck, I get in my truck, my heart's pounding like crazy, the hair is still standing up my arms and stuff like that. I turned the lights on, nobody was there, completely gone. And so what I did was, I was so scared out of this, I decided to leave all my equipment there and go back to the hotel. I wasn't a believer in ghosts up until that particular point, but after having that experience, I just do not like to be in cemeteries. So when it gets to be dark, I am out of there. This particular job itself is very, very unique, simply for the fact that it has a lot of historical value to it. And it's one of the better projects that I've worked on, meaning is that I was really surprised that the grass was so low, and sometimes when the grass is high or the vegetation is high, it's very, very hard scanning. So given the fact that we're of the location and there's been no mowing up in this area, the ground conditions are excellent. And I would say this is probably one of the better cemeteries that I had the opportunity to scan.
Here they lie, 58 men, women, and children who called October Mountain home. For 46 years, the cemetery slowly grew until the villagers left the mountain in search of better opportunities. As the years passed, the forest began to surround the cemetery, and it was almost lost to the annals of time. But thanks to dedicated local historians and researchers who painstakingly scoured burial records, most of the West Branch occupants have been identified. And now, thanks to the bone finder, we know for sure where they rest.
The stone, the family would select the size and the type of stone and the engravings to be put on it. The most famous one that I can think of is, and I'm not sure whose it was, but it says, "I told you I didn't feel good."